So this white woman left this comment under one of my teachings where I was teaching about how during slavery, the white mistress, the slave owner's wife, 9 out of 10 times did not breastfeed her babies and that she had the slaves do it. Well, this white person said the only time they breastfed a white baby was when the mother died or if she could not feed the baby. No white woman would want a black woman to feed her baby. And so because this comment is so detached from reality, and this is why it's vitally important that I continue, and everybody else who teaches this continue to teach on the truth about slavery, because this is just an ignorant statement for various reasons. Let's jump into it. One, breastfeeding, a large majority of white mistresses, as they call them, did not breastfeed because it was tied to class. It was tied to gender expectations. It was tied to medical myths that they had back in the time. And it also was tied to exploitation of black female bodies. Let's first talk about class and status. In those times, breastfeeding was considered laborious, messy, time consuming, and beneath elite white women. So they were seen, if you had slaves, you were seen as upper class. And so why would you lower yourself to such messy, laborious task as breastfeeding your baby? So that is where the whole term wet nursing came from. Those white women saw it as a status symbol to have their slave breastfeed their baby. They weren't repulsed by black women that they didn't want them. You got to understand, see, what you're thinking is that these white people saw the slaves as human. They did not. You cannot see another person as a human being and enslave them. You have to detach the humanity from them in order to oppress and suppress a person. You just have to. And so they did not care. But see, this ignorant, ill-informed, uneducated white person is saying that they would never want a black woman to feed their babies. Not only did they care, they preferred the black woman, to feed their babies, just like they preferred the black woman to cook their food and sew their clothes and rear their kids, and in many cases, sleep with their husbands. Let's go on with the lesson. Not only was breastfeeding, nursing, it became a status symbol, but it was also proof that you were wealthy enough to force another woman to do it for you. Also, white femininity was tied to being refined and delicate and ornate, not physical in any kind of way. So you have to understand the times. But see, again, if you don't crack open a book or if you're reading watered down white history, you'll never get the facts. Second, breastfeeding was a symbol that dealt with beauty and body ideals. You got to understand, many believed nursing would ruin their figures or make them less sexually desirable. Now, over time, we realized, medically, that actually the very opposite happens when you breastfeed many times. It helps you, the woman, as they say, get that body snatched back. They didn't realize the fact of the nutrients that go into the baby. All they were concerned about is they wanted to look genteel, refined, and they want to ruin their figures, and they didn't want to be less sexy in front of their husbands. But quiet as it's kept, their husbands 9 or 10 times didn't find them that sexy from the get-go, or they wouldn't been sneaking out to the slave plantations, sleeping, raping, and carrying on with those women. Also, a woman's worth in a patriarchy society was tied to appearance and marriageability. So some avoided breastfeeding for vanity and social pressures. Again, person who left this comment, you're seeing it in the eyes of clearly you, I don't even know if you're prejudiced or racist, but you're seeing it in the eyes if you were prejudiced. You probably wouldn't want no black woman's tit in your baby's mouth because you probably don't like black women. But in those times, they saw the total opposite. White women was like, I get this slave to do everything for me. So I can just sit on my front porch and fan myself while I wear this tight corset and sip mint juleps and watch the little darkies in the field. This is American history. Another reason why the white women did not, the majority of them who owned slaves, I'm not saying the poor whites didn't, but the majority who owned slaves did not, is because for medical and cultural beliefs. Doctors and household guides of the time claimed nursing could harm a mother's health and prevent fertility. They just was ignorant medically. They didn't know. Secondly, myths circulated that enslaved women were naturally better suited to breastfeed. Third, these were racist, pseudoscientific ideas, y'all, but they gave cover for exploitation. It just gave rise to them to exploit the slaves. Another reason, economics of enslaved lactation. Let's break this down. I'm going to take my time with this because I know that this person I'm talking to specifically is slow. Enslaved women's milk was commodity. It was like a commodity, okay? So they were forced to nurse white babies, and sometimes they were even rented out as wet nurses, y'all. There were even ads in 1800 newspapers that literally read, "Wanted, a healthy wet nurse, sober with a good supply of milk." Now, let me ask you, does that sound like a white person that would never dare let a black woman put her tit in her baby's mouth? Again, it is so vitally important that this history continues to be taught. You just have no clue. You just left this comment just as ignorant as the day is long. The slaves' own children often went hungry while their milk was given to a white baby. Let me reiterate that. The enslaved Africans' children often went hungry because their mothers were forced to breastfeed a white woman's child. Another reason a lot of white women did not breastfeed and they made the slaves do it. Nursing, because of intimacy and also violence. Nursing is deeply intimate, right? And white infants often grew up suckling from black women and bonding with them. See, because whatever you feed and nurture is going to bond with you, or at least it should, until you teach it racist ways. Because many of those same babies that those enslaved Africans nursed, as those young men grew up, or young women grew up, they became that slave's master and started to mistreat them. Not in all cases, but in the majority, yes. The same society taught them later that black people were inferior. For enslaved women, this was reproductive violence because you're being forced to nurture another child while unable to fully care for your own. Let that sit. Sit with that. Think about it. This was modern day. I put a gun to your head. You are my slave, white woman. And I said, listen, white bitch, I don't care if you got children at home that need to be breastfed. You will breastfeed my baby. Let's make America great again, y'all. The last reason I'm going to talk about is variations and exceptions. Not every white woman avoided breastfeeding. We know that nothing's a monolith. Poorer women, some religious women, and women without enslaved labor did do their own nursing. But among the planter elite, the norm was to outsource breastfeeding. So after slavery, I'm not going to go into that. So the bottom line is, what you're saying right here, you have no clue what you're talking about. And so I beg you, I beseech you, go to the library while there are still some books and ask the librarian, can you please give me books that talk about the atrocities of slavery? And you sit your white ass down and you read until your eyes start to hurt. And after you read, you repent. Repent for the years of ignorance, willful ignorance that you chose to partake in. And then after you do that, you go outside and you get in your car and you drive home and you start calling family and friends and texting them and you explain to them what you just read and you educate them. Because willful ignorance is no excuse nowadays. No excuse.